Okay. Hello, book lovers out there in Facebook land and future land. If you're watching this after the fact, I'm Amanda with Warwick's. Julie is in beautiful Cincinnati at the yearly meeting, pardon me, of the American Booksellers Association, Winter Institute, schmoozing with authors and all the cool kids. But
Where
we
you
are
were
here.
live, you were live last year from Winter Institute, right?
Yes, it was a little bit of a mess. We were just sitting in the lobby, um, depending on anyone
Grabbing,
who walked by. Yeah, just grabbing random
right.
booksellers to ask them what they were excited about. But it was great. But yeah, I was kind of hoping Julie would drop in. Oh my goodness, here comes Julia. Okay, well, if we can't have a Julie, we should definitely have a Julia. Um,
That's right.
okay, so this is a very special, bittersweet. Hi, Julia.
Hi, sorry I'm late.
Okay, I'm glad you're here. This is a bittersweet tea time because we are saying goodbye to Steve Atinksy. After more than 20 years with Penguin Random House, he is retiring to do even awesomer things. And Liz Camfiord, who is here today, will
Hi.
be taking up the baton. So we are happy to have them both here today. We will miss you, Steve, but I'm glad you're giving us a few more books before you take off.
Thank you, Amanda.
Yeah, you always have such beautiful recommendations for us. So since we have such a full house, let's go. Steve, you're first, and then it'll be Liz, Gabe, Tom, and Julia.
Okay, starting off with, I know Gabe's familiar with this author. Can you see this clearly? I'm having trouble holding it up. It's Dolly Alderton, her new novel, Good Material. It's been out for about a month now, I think. And as Gabe knows, Dolly writes both fiction and nonfiction. Harper publishes her nonfiction, and Knopf has been doing her fiction. And this one is about a stand-up comic whose girlfriend breaks up with him, and he can't understand why. Why did she break up with me? And Good Material is kind of, material for his stand-up act is kind of what that is a take on. But he wants to get back together. He wants to find out what happened. Meanwhile, his stand-up career is in shambles. It's very funny. It reads, Dolly's hilarious on her own. And this has like a Nick Hornby vibe to it as well, especially early Nick Hornby. And it's all in his voice until the very end. And then we hear from her. Her name's Jen. And she takes it in an unexpected direction. It's absolutely fabulous. It's the first time Dolly's been on the bestseller list for fiction in the U.S. And because she's a UK author and she's huge there, but now she's kind of hitting her fiction success here in the U.S. So that's Dolly Alderton, and it is Good Material, out now.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, I started that and it's really like an infectious voice. You just want to keep reading. I think that'll. I'm going to share my screen. I'm next, right? Okay, let's see if I know how to do this. I should be skilled at it by now, although that's not the one I want to share.
Ah!
Can you see?
Yes.
Yeah.
Ah! Martyr.
Have you read it?
Oh yeah, I love it.
It's so good. So I know most people probably know about this by now. It's been on the New York Times bestseller list. It was an instant New York Times bestseller, but I cannot miss the opportunity to gush about it because in my experience, poets write the best novels. And Martyr joins my favorites list, maybe starting with Sylvia Plath's The Bell Jar, and certainly Ocean Vuong's On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous. And now we have Martyr. So in interviews, he really talks about how he wrote this novel, and this poet's debut novel, an acclaimed poet. I've loved his poetry for a long time, but now everybody else is knowing about him through this novel. So he wrote it during the pandemic. And what I love is he talks about, in order to transition from writing poetry to writing a novel, he put himself on this narrative diet where he was reading 2 novels a week and watching a film. And I think it really definitely did the trick, because this is just totally compelling and layered. It introduces us to Cyrus Shams, and like Kaveh Akbar himself, Cyrus is a recovering addict, a recovering alcoholic, an opioid addict, and he's writing a book about martyrs. So if you like that book within a book aspect, which I always find really interesting, this has that. He is a depressed, sleep deprived writer, really struggling with the meaning of life and his purpose in it. He's haunted by the death of his mother, who died in a plane crash on July 3rd, 1988, when he was just a baby. This is a true incident when the US Navy accidentally shot down an Iranian passenger flight, number 655. So Kaveh's talked about wanting to bring some attention, although it was long ago, to this, and just the existential question of what one life lost in this. We just hear about the numbers of deaths, but what the ripple effect of one life lost. And so he and his father in the novel moved to Indiana, and they have a life there. But he is, really plagued and, as I said, depressed. He has a best friend who he very much takes for granted, but is a great character in the novel. And this friend says, hey, there's this very interesting artist in Brooklyn who is who's dying of cancer, and she is on exhibit for her last days. She's in a museum exhibit, willing to talk to people visiting in the museum about, the meaning of life. So he, of course, is very compelled to go to Brooklyn with his friend and talk to her. There is a mystery that unfolds. It's just gorgeous. This is a book that, and lots of people feel this way about it, you finish it and you want to reread it. I want to reread it with a highlighter because there are so many great quotes. I love, and I know I'm going on a little bit long about this, but there's a great scene where he's talking, and Amanda, you might remember this. He's with his sponsor, his AA sponsor, and it's supposed to be his time with the sponsor, but there's another sponsee that's in more of a desperate situation, and he's resenting this other sponsee. And I love what his sponsor says to him, which is, he says, Cyrus, it's a good day when you're not the patient. And so that's one of the quotes, but they're just incredibly beautiful passages. So Martyr, if you haven't read it, it's just, it's for anyone. He's been on PBS, there's just like no shortage. And he's also so excited with what's happening. Like you see him on social media, just bubbling over with excitement about how this novel is being received.
Yeah, he seems like such a sweet, genuine, grateful human being. I see you have a little screenshot of that great article that was in the New York Times recently.
Yeah.
I put the link in the comments for anyone who wants to read it. It was a really great profile of the author.
Yeah, and he's it's right now, if anybody knows about this book club, I think it's kind of an interesting one. Kaya Gerber's Library Science Book Club. They're discussing it, and you can see her interview with him online too.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I think this is a great book club pick. Yeah, Julie loved it. I loved it. Kim loved it at Warwick. So we're all about this book.
Great.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right. It is. Oh, Gabe disappeared. Why? Oh, you're on mute, Tom.
Yeah, we lost Gabe somewhere in there.
Oh,
Can you hear me
dear.
now?
Yeah. Okay,
Okay.
well, we'll go for it, Tom.
Okay. So my first book is Lucy Sant's I Heard Her Call My Name, which is out tomorrow. And it's an astonishing memoir of a transgender woman at the age of 66. Lucy Sant has lived this life of, it reminds me so much of it is set in the New York of Patti Smith's Just Kids. So you really get a strong feeling for New York at that time, because Lucy Sant was Luke Sant at that time, and they were moving in this world of the 70s, and so this is the world of Patti Smith, it's the world of Robert Mapplethorpe, the world of bohemians, and that's how Lucy Sant sees herself, as a bohemian. But she was presenting a facade that during, just in the last few years, and it was 2021 that she sent an email to her closest friends and confidants that Luke was becoming Lucy. So and there's so many beautiful things about this book, but one of them is that she doesn't pretend to tell a universal story or anyone else's story except her own very particular story. And so she's a fantastic writer. I think that's what this book, the reviews are already amazing. That's what people are going to remember about this book, is how great the writing is. An incredible story. Already getting rave reviews. Dwight Garner in the New York Times loved it. Laura Miller in Slate calls the writing as striking, perceptive, elegant as ever, because Luke, when she was writing as Luke Sant, the books are amazing portraits of New York City. So a really fantastic writer looking at her life. I love this quote from Wasu at the that we have on the back. An astonishing, once-in-a-lifetime achievement, as two stories thread into one, from losing yourself in the lights, the sounds, the eyes of others, to the miraculous discovery of the language with which you can put yourself back together. So Wasu is the author of Stay True. And I think that, reader, like, that's a book that you didn't have to be interested in the world that Wasu came out of. It was just an amazing memoir, like also slim, told in just the right amount of words. So I think many different kinds of readers can come to this. And then thinking about Stay True, that is one of the many books that Steve talked about on Tea Time that will always stick with me. Like, when I think of Stay True, I think of you, Steve. So anyway, I Heard Her Call My Name, out tomorrow. This is going to be one of those books that stays around for the entire year. It's going to be on a lot of 10 best lists at the end of the year. I am sure of it.
Sounds wonderful. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Gabe is back.
Gabe is back. Sorry about that.
Want to go for it?
I can do it. Head first.
Okay. Oh, let me give you the
Give me the
Okay.
password.
There you go.
Unlock me.
The power.
Where did I go? So yeah, really interesting books, from Ms. Alderton, and some good literary fiction. And I'd miss this. Is that a biography time, or is that a memoir?
It's a memoir. Yeah.
I came in kind of late. Yeah, that sounds terrific.
It's incredible.
And then I got something kind of a completely different. So for the first 4 books, I think something completely different. This is a semi-complicated book, but a very accessible commercial book. I'm going to compare it to Pong Shepard's The Cartographers, which was this big, fat, satisfying romp of a mystery-ish, fantastical novel that turned Pong into a star. And we're now reading her next book. So this book, I think, is for that audience. It is slightly fantastical. It is the story of a young woman who is working in a used bookstore, and figuring what to do with your life, as one does. And she has this fella die in front of her one day. An older man dies in front of her, and he's reading this particular book called The Book of Doors, and it's got this inscription telling her that any door can be opened if you just know where to look. So this book is a portal of sorts that can take her to any moment that she wants to be in. But as soon as the fella dies, she takes over the book. She's approached by the librarian, and it all seems kind of pat to begin with, but it's actually quite a little complicated, moving around of a lot of parts. So that's the setup. And then, of course, there's always the bad guys that are in search. So the librarian is the keeper of a selection of books that have these powers, and he's been entrusted to protect them. And of course, there's always somebody who wants more power. So there's arch villains and things in here. There's a chase. There's slightly picaresque, slightly fantastical. There's mystery. There's twists and turns. So it's a nice, big, fun, entertaining romp of a book that I think will cross over to a lot of audiences. I think a good literary reader wants something that's going to escape, that's not too fantasy forward. Maybe you're not a fantasy reader per se. I think it's the kind of book you can pick up. Mystery readers will pick it up. People who like a fun, slightly different kind of a narrative will pick it up. So I think there's a lot of upside, really fun package. I think kind of gives you an idea what the book is doing. It's a fun, playful book. It's very much way.
Yeah, I love the cover and the tagline on it. This book is worth killing for. That's very good.
I love melodrama.
Cool, thank you. Julia.
Okay, let me unmute myself and get myself together here. I went fun this week because it's Valentine's Day. And so I am recommending How You Get the Girl by Anita Kelly, which is queer sapphic romance. And it is a high school basketball coach and her assistant coach. So it's not creepy and weird. It's just two adults who are excited about each other. And it's a very, very fun romance. I loved it. Anita Kelly wrote Love and Other Disasters, which folks absolutely loved when it first came out. And it takes place in Nashville, and it's got everything that you would want, which is female basketball and also ladies falling in love with each other. I mean, happy Valentine's Day, everyone. Have a great time with this one.
People are loving
That's what I got.
sports romances. I keep hearing about all different sports, right? So this would fit into
Yes.
that.
But hockey's the
Straights-
biggest, apparently.
The Straights have a hockey romance situation
Yes.
happening right now.
Yes.
The gays are not involved in that. But it is a situation. But this one's women's basketball, which I think is always a good place for women who love women to fall in love with each other. So
Thank you for letting us know it's not creepy. And also
Yes.
for the update on what the Straights are up to.
I mean, I definitely am the voice of all the straight people. Definitely. I know exactly what's happening.
Funnily enough, we tonight at Warwick's, or no, I'm sorry, wait, is it tonight? Oh gosh, what do I do for a living? We're hosting Susan Elizabeth Phillips, who her new book is, yes, it is tonight. It's also a sports romance. It's trying to remember which sport.
It is a football story, and
Okay.
it is a lot of different things. It's Susan Elizabeth Phillips, man.
Yep. Yeah, it's it is football. So it looks really sweet. And I think it's gonna be a fun crowd tonight. And she's doing giveaways and things. So if you want something fun to do tonight, come on down to Warwick's. Okay, and now we're back to returning champion and veteran Steve.
Well, as long as we're talking about girls and basketball, I might as well mention that we've got, Knopf has, I'll be gone when it comes out, but Liz will be here. So a brief mention of, what is that? That's not what I'm talking about. It's Brittany Griner's autobiography is coming in May. Very exciting. It's really about everything, but it's of course about her being imprisoned in Russia and all of that. It's embargoed. I haven't read a word.
That was my next question. Have you read anything?
I haven't read a word. Maybe non-disclosure agreements can be signed to get some previews of it, but it's going to be amazing. Very exciting that's coming out. Okay, now my next book tonight is Holly Gramazio's debut, The Husbands. There we go. Holly is a Brit, and this is very funny. It's a book edited by Lee Boudreau, who brought us Lessons in Chemistry, among other things. And this is about a young woman. She's, I guess, in her late 20s and living in London. She comes home from a hen party one night, and there's a guy in her home acting like he, not only that he knows her, but they have some sort of relationship. And she looks around the apartment and she sees that there's photos of them and a photo of them on their wedding day. And she looks at her phone and there's all these references to him as her husband. Well, it turns out she has a magic attic. And if one husband goes up into the attic to fetch something, another husband will come out. And she starts rotating through all these husbands, sending them to the attic for different things, but mostly just to get, I don't, she's unsatisfied with, who this person is. It's very funny. It takes some great turns, and I totally enjoyed it. It's Holly Gramazio. It comes out in April. So right now I'm talking about a couple of books that I won't be here to talk about in April. So I'm gonna talk about them now. Holly Gramazio's The Husbands. I think you'll be hearing a lot about it.
I had booksellers telling me all about it. You probably sold them, and they were like, this was in Albuquerque, and they were like, the most fun we've had in a book in a long time.
That's right. Also in at Mrs. Dalloway's, Hannah, who also
yeah.
loved good material. So I feel like there's kind of a symmetry between those two books and the kind of reader. They're crazy about this one as well.
I didn't know Lee had edited Lessons in Chemistry. I didn't know that was her book.
Yeah, that's Lee.
She's such a great editor. Her books,
she's so good.
A really good editor.
I love her. Yeah.
That sounds delightful.
And you can go online, and the author has created this little game where you can get your husbands, like you put in some info and they pair you up with stuff. And she wrote all the descriptions of the different husbands. It's very fun. And you can just keep going and going and go through lots of husbands. Okay, my turn next again. Okay. Not martyr, but one of our kind. So this is Nicola Yoon, who has been writing extremely popular, turned into movies, YA novels, and this is her first adult novel. She's a local author. She lives in LA. So her big YA books were Everything, Everything, and The Sun is Also a Star. But again, this is a total departure. It's not a YA crossover. It's being described as a contemporary horror novel, kind of like Stepford Wives meets Get Out. Because the main character, our narrator, Jasmine, is pregnant, I kept kind of getting these creepy vibes of Rosemary's Baby. So we are introduced to a married couple. They have a 5-year-old son, and the husband has lost his brother a few years back to a police shooting. His brother was unarmed, and his brother was murdered by the police, and he's totally traumatized. He's in protector mode as a father and a husband, and so he moves the family to this fictional suburb in LA called Liberty, and it's a gated all-Black community. The schools, the stores, it's all like this isolated community. But our narrator, Jasmine's a public defender, and she is very uncomfortable with shutting the world out in this way. And she's, fighting for her clients in downtown LA. And there's a lot of tension in the marriage about this because the husband starts kind of acting strange, and he's going to the wellness center at the community, which has armed guards. And when she tours it, she hears screams, and she learns that there used to be a Black Lives Matter chapter in the community in Liberty, but they were kicked out. Everything's really creepy and suspicious. She's trying to find like-minded people. And I won't give the ending away, but it's pretty much of a shocker and a really provocative storyline, like nothing I've read before. And when Nicola Yoon writes about being Black in America, it's super powerful. So I can't wait to see how this novel, which is coming out in June, will be received, what the reviews will say. Great book club book, and yeah, one of our kind.
Wow.
Wait for it.
Awesome cover too.
Yeah.
Yeah, we saw tons of her everything, and The Sun Is Also a Star. So I'm curious to see how this does. Sometimes it's challenging for the young adult authors to move into adult fiction, but I don't know.
Yeah.
This sounds like it has a lot going for it. So
Yeah, it's quite the premise. I'll give you one quote from it. So when she's like, you know, countering some of her neighbors, and she's saying, "Why are you, not going to this protest? Why don't you care?" And they're saying things to her like, "We aren't giving up, we're giving in." What does it mean?
Mhm. Yeah,
I'll stop
creepy,
sharing.
intense. Cool, thank you.
Mhm.
And I guess we'll return to the original order with Gabe.
Sure.
And will
Oh
not be
no,
drowned out by other voices.
I fed the beast.
That Liz's book would have been a great segue into the other book that I was going to present, but I'm not presenting it today. It's actually a pre-World War II book, nonfiction, but I'm not presenting it because you know what? Every time I pick up the paper, it's like I feel like I'm in 90 years ago in fascist Germany or fascist Italy or fascist parts of France. With the nationalism and madness. So I'm staying light. I must stay light today, y'all. And then it's Valentine's Day. So bam, Susan Elizabeth Phillips. You want your love fix? You got it. Provided by HarperCollins. You're welcome. Susan is one of our life. Susan Elizabeth, we merged with Morrow in 1999, and Susan Elizabeth Phillips had been publishing with Morrow. So I've been working with her for whatever that long is, 29, 24 years, 25 years now, publishing a book. She doesn't do a book a year because she waits till the book is right. People look forward to it. I remember Adrian used to be like, if you get the new Susan Elizabeth Phillips, Gally, and she has been a guilty pleasure of a lot of my booksellers who read like really serious fiction and really like activist nonfiction and but I let fewer and fewer. I think that the staffs have moved, but I used to get a lot of requests for Susan. Anyways, sports related romance. This is what she does. She writes these big fat, good solid women's books. In this case, we have a brother, a sister, and the agent. So Rory is the daughter of her brother Clint, and Clint is a very successful football player. He's a professional now, and she is kind of again at loose ends, not really like kind of the black sheep failure of the family because Clint is so hugely successful. She's got a complex, and Clint is represented by Brett, and Brett, so he's the agent, and at a party, Rory and Clint and Brett get together, which is kind of a big no-no because it's the client's sister. So the agent Brett is kind of, they keep it on the DL. Anyways, one day they can't get a hold of Clint, so Rory shows up to look for her brother at his house. Brett shows up at the same time, and there's a dead body of Ashley, who is Brett's girlfriend, Clint's girlfriend, who Brett had called a gold digger. A lot of drama. A lot of characters to keep in place. So she's found dead and Clint's not around. So the hunt is on for the murder because, of course, it can't be Clint. He's too good a guy. So Brett and Rory get together and pursue the case. And I'm not going to say whether they solve it or not. I'm not going to spoil it for anyone, but it probably turns out all right.
The way we
So
like
she'll
it.
be at the store. And she's now a part-time, she splits her time down here in Encinitas and Chicago, I think is where she's been.
Oh, that's cool.
So she's here a lot more now.
Oh,
Why wouldn't
wonderful.
you?
Yeah, because the book itself is set in Chicago, yeah?
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. All right, Tom.
All right, so my next book this fits for Valentine's. A Wild and Heavenly Place. This is out last week from Robin Oliveira. So it starts out in Scotland, in Glasgow, in the late 1870s. A rich woman and a poor man meet, and then circumstances change. Her family loses all their money, and she ends up going to what is now Seattle. So Seattle, this is really about the founding of Seattle, like city of Seattle. So that's the Wild and Heavenly Place. So she's followed there by the young man when the two met in Glasgow. And so it's about, it's a love story. It's about class. It's about immigration. And I've always loved, we published Robin Oliveira's My Name is Mary Sutter maybe 10, maybe more years ago. And that was about a woman who was a midwife during the Civil War who wanted to be a surgeon. So she writes great women characters who are pushing against the bonds of society in their time. She does tons of research, but the writing is really, excellent. So it's a good mix of literary and commercial. If you like any kind of, good historical novel to dig into, this is great. I feel like Seattle, certainly didn't know much about Seattle and its origins. I didn't know that coal mining was a thing in Seattle. I guess I should have known that. But anyway, so there's a lot of interesting stuff that comes out, but really it's the two characters, it's the setting, just a really satisfying, star-crossed love story. If you like Susan Meisner, I know many readers do, this is for you. A Wild and Heavenly Place.
Sounds like a very good Warwick's Book Club book.
For sure, yeah.
I also did not know that Seattle was a coal mining town.
No.
Yeah. All I know is flannel and Nirvana.
No, clearly we need to know more than that, but I knew
Yeah.
that too. That's about what I knew.
Do
Okay,
you need to
Julie.
know more
Flannel
than
and
that?
Nirvana.
Okay. Mine, so this is not a Valentine's Day book, but one that is nonetheless very pertinent to things that are happening in our world today. This is The Hammer, Power, Inequality, and the Struggle for the Soul of Labor by Hamilton Nolan. So this is at once a great history of the American labor movement. So looking at sort of what the labor movement has earned us in so far as workers' rights, weekends, 8-hour workdays, things like that. And it looks at some of the history of that and sort of some of the, those old, speaking of mines, those old like company towns and things that sort of kept Americans penned in. And then on the other hand, it looks at the state of labor today. It looks at where we're at with labor movements. It looks at a number of different labor movements happening right now, from the teachers that were striking a couple of years ago in West Virginia, and sort of goes through to some of the UAW strikes and more recent sort of organizing that's been happening within labor. It is a great book. If you have any interest in labor history, if you have any interest in sort of what we're seeing sort of rumbling through the United States right now in labor movements, this is a great book for you. I really can't recommend it highly enough. Everyone who it feels like a quiet sort of sleeper book. Like people keep coming back to me and saying like, oh, I read this and I loved it. Like, or I read this and I really wasn't expecting to learn as much as I did, and those kinds of things. So, yeah, it's a really good one.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It could be a Valentine's gift depending on your Valentine.
Yeah, I mean, I would not be sad about receiving this book for Valentine's Day, but you know, I'm a weirdo, so it's fine.
Okay, it's the lightning round, and it is Steve's last book ever on Tea Time.
My last choice ever on Tea Time is a book coming out in also in April. It's Hampton Sides, The Wide, Wide Sea, Imperial Ambition, First Contact, and the Fateful Final Voyage of Captain James Cook. I absorbed this book. It was so good. If you read The Wager and liked it, you have to read this book. It is as good or better. And I say that in some ways because of the historical significance of James Cook, and also because of the narrative and what happens and unfolds. I didn't know very much about James Cook, just he had some island somewhere and a statue in Hawaii. That's about all I knew. And this, okay, so in The Wager, the captain is a rookie. He's a novice, and a lot of the mistakes are because he hasn't done it before. But James Cook was the most revered captain in the British fleet. He was a navigator, like a navigator's navigator. He was so good at that. So in the 1870s or 1770s, I'm sorry, 1770s, we all remember everyone. So we all remember everyone was looking for the Northwest Passage. Really important finding that Northwest Passage. Everyone wanted to discover it. So he's he's supposed to be retired and writing his second memoir, and he kind of gets hooked back into doing this one last voyage to look for the Northwest Passage. And so on the way, he goes through a lot of the places he's been before, especially in the South Pacific. The main action, and especially towards as we're moving through the novel, takes place in the South Pacific, and where he's had great relationships with the indigenous people on all these islands. He's treated them with respect. He's protected uh, the citizens from the venereal disease that some of his sailors are carrying. He's very conscientious about these things, and very disciplined with his soldiers. And so anyway, so one thing they weren't expecting on this voyage as they're headed up to Alaska, or that area, the Arctic Circle, looking for the Northwest Passage, is they run into these islands, which it's Hawaii. And it was there. Nobody had, I mean, you can't say they discovered Hawaii. It was already there, but they ran into it on this voyage. And what the first time, okay, so they go into Hawaii and islands, and you learn a lot about the Hawaiians and all their interactions with each other and their rivalries with different tribes or whatever between each other, and all these their religion and all these aspects that he's aside as one of these historians who does meticulous research, and and a great storyteller at the same time. So you're learning a lot. And when he first gets there, he's kind of treated like a god. He sort of resembles one of their gods, and they just treat him like that, and everything's great. And they keep on going up toward the Alaska, looking for the Northwest Passage. I'm telling too much because it's so good. And I mean, the ending. He dies in Hawaii. He's killed in Hawaii. That much, going into it. But how it unfolds is so horrifying and well told, and just cinematic, that you'll be captivated by this. I guess, but the last 150 pages, especially of this, I almost called it a novel, because it reads that way. It's that good. So I guess that's it for me.
Wow.
The Wide, Wide Sea, Hampton Sides.
I was looking at the all those different subject classifications in in our distributors database, Ingram, for this book, and
Yeah.
one of them says nonfiction novels, and I was like, wait, what? So I guess that's,
There it is. Yeah.
you know, the novels that are based on, or the
Yeah.
history that is written so engagingly that it reads like fiction, I suppose.
Well, we've got the autofiction, so it's sort
Yeah.
of the historical counterpart, or to
So we're
that.
not saying narrative nonfiction anymore. We're saying
Oh yeah, that's
nonfiction
what we've been
novels.
calling it. Yeah. Narrative. Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, I
Sounds
love
really
that
good.
you are like how much you just lit up visibly when you're talking about this book,
I
Steve.
love this book. It's so good.
Thank you
So
for
good.
saving such a great one for your last
Yeah,
hurrah.
that's it.
Okay, Liz.
April it
April.
comes out. Yeah.
Yeah, and Warwick's loves its Hampton Side, so that's gonna
Yeah,
be a big one for us.
it will be. You'll do really
Cool.
well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So I'm a huge poetry lover, and this is a great collection. I own the hardcover, but the paperback is coming back out for National Poetry Month in April. This is Kevin Young. He's the director of the Smithsonian Museum Museum of African American History and Culture. He's the chancellor of the American Poetry Academy of American Poets. This is his 15th collection. As you can see on that slide, the Los Angeles Times calls him one of the poetry stars of his generation. So true. These are poems. You can kind of think of them as stones too, sort of relics of his family heritage of the American South. Many are set in cemeteries or in churches. They're gorgeous. I'm really refreshed by the fact that they rhyme, not in a forced or contrived way, but so little contemporary poetry rhymes. And there's just something about reading them that's just great. So it's about family, as I said, it's about their poems about loss, a lot of poems about childhood, fireflies in Louisiana, you know, just so atmospheric, so beautiful, so deep. Great for Black History Month to dip into some of his poems, which really are so relevant to his history and to the American South, as I said. Also being a father, he actually has one of his poems that he's turned into a picture book, which is so lovely, called Emile and the Field. So highly recommend the poems. If you don't have poetry, you know, fans, this is really accessible, and just couldn't recommend it highly enough.
And incredible cover art.
Yeah, the paint, and I have the hardcover here next to me, and the title of this art is called Beachcomber. And as a beachcomber myself, I find way too many plastic toys in the sand. So I can see where this might have come from. But yeah, look at all those guns. Obviously, these aren't found on the beach,
Right.
but it's a great title.
Thank you.
Sure.
And Gabe?
I'm gonna have to check out the Kevin Young book.
Mm-hmm.
One of my college profs was a strict meter, and he all his poems are rhymed and metered, and the whole class was on poetic structure, and it was actually interesting. It was a Victorian literature class, but so interesting. Like you said, a lot of contemporary poetry is very free verse, and it's sometimes refreshing to kind of go back. Though I'm frustrated by the novels in verse in the young adult world. I'm tired of those, but we all have our things. Enough of my
hot takes from Gabe.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I'm gonna be like, get fired. What? We got like 8 on this list. Sorry. Can you know how to delete, right? You can go back, scrub this thing. As I said, I'm keeping it light, I'm keeping it real. Kate Quinn is a local San Diegan. She's been in town for a long time. El Cajon area, I don't know. She probably moves around a little bit, but she's San Diego local. Freda Warwick, she does a lot of things there. She introduces other authors and she shows up a lot. And then Janie Chang, who a lot of you may not have heard of, but Janie's got a nice series of books. Here I have some of Kate's and some of Janie's books. If you like the My Girl Lisa C, You'll like the Janie Chang books. The Alice Network was the first Reese Witherspoon Book Club pick, paperback original. So we have deep roots with Reese, as does Kate. So the two of them together, we recently did another book that Kate Quinn wrote with a couple of co-authors called like the Scarlet Ribbon. Did very, very well. I was kind of curious how it would do. So in this case, we have a historical novel set in San Francisco, 1906, right about the time of the big earthquake. We have two women, Gemma, who's a golden-haired soprano looking for create a life in the opera world, and then there is a Su Ling, who is a petite laundress in Chinatown, and they sort of come together in this awkward way, and they meet this fellow who becomes a patron of theirs. And he introduces them to the Phoenix Crown. And then the earthquake happens, and this man disappears, and as does the Phoenix Crown. But he has gotten these two young women on the right track. So they're sort of, getting on their feet. And then 5 years later, we move forward 5 years later, and the Phoenix Crown emerges again. So these two young women are looking for some sort of redemption, and they're on the prowl. So straight up page turning, very plotted historical fiction.
Yeah, Warwick's loves its Kate Quinn, and Janie Chang's books look awesome too. They are appearing tomorrow at Coronado Public Library. All the reserved seats are taken, but we'll have some free seats, first come, first served, if you're interested in town. That looks great. Yeah, Kate Quinn's fans are very devoted to her.
She's also one of those who broadens out. She can, I think, a good reader, like a literary reader will, if you want to escape for something, you can pick up one of her books and, be taken away.
And she always is like very open in talking about her process, and really fun to hear. Okay, Tom.
All right. Well, I don't read a lot of business books, but the kind of business books I do read are, inside story of usually when things go terribly wrong in a company. I love that stuff, and you'll recognize this. Extremely hardcore inside Elon Musk's Twitter. This I could not put down. This is Julia, this is the kind of the flip side of your book. This is the other side of where we are. It's about how Elon Musk lit $44 billion on fire and burned down Twitter. Zoe Schiffer she covers this. This is her beat, technology and Twitter most in particular. And so she's interviewed over 60 employees. She's looked at thousands of pages of documents, Slack messages, court filings, to tell the story of how the Musk and the people around Musk basically declared war on, all of us, but also their own employees. It's about it's related. It's about the post-pandemic labor movement, and then this war between the executives and the workforce. And there are many, maybe it's just filled with horror, as you can imagine, horror stories of employees who, all different kinds of employees who, some of them are trying to save the company, and then, in the face of Musk, and then they're fired in the most brutal ways. There's a trust and safety expert at Twitter who becomes the subject of a harassment campaign that's brought on by Elon Musk. It's just, there's no end to the story. So this really tells the story of that first year. It's been a little over a year. And it's you can't put it down. It's just filled with so many incredible stories. Matt Levine, who writes for Bloomberg, who's a really smart writer about money, says Zoe Schiffer has written the definitive book on perhaps the weirdest business story of our time, a fast-paced and riveting account of a hilarious and tragic mess. I think that's exactly right. But
yeah, in my head, I'm seeing that gif of Michael Jackson eating the popcorn, like that.
Yes, exactly.
So I
Exactly.
imagine
I
the
love
feeling of
I love the back cover. It says, "Error, something went wrong, but don't fret. It's not your fault. Let's try again."
so good. So
Yeah.
good. Oh wow.
Woof.
If you like that kind of book,
Woof.
yeah,
I
Okay.
mean, that sounds amazing, but woof. Like,
Yeah.
I know. Yeah.
that guy is.
Is that Penguin Press, Tom?
It's portfolio.
Oh, it's Portfolio. Okay.
Yeah.
Julia will do a lightning round pick, and then we have a few comments and a question for Steve, if you will, at the end.
Okay. Mine is very fast. Which is a paperback. This is a paperback release of Ellen Hildebrand's latest novel, The 5-Star Weekend. I know Warwick's and Ellen Hildebrand are a sort of a match made in heaven. You guys do so well with her books. And she's a New York Times, #1 New York Times bestseller. These are great, they're great summer books and beach reads, but they're also great rainy day books. And we have a few more coming our way next week. So maybe a good one to sort of hibernate with and wish you were in a Nantucket summer. I will say Ellen's last of the Nantucket series, book number 27, is coming out in the summertime this year. So this would be a good one to catch up on before that last book comes out this summer. Not Ellen's last book, but just the last of the Nantucket series that she's doing. So yeah, so it's now in paperback. I personally love a paperback, so I would highly encourage, if you haven't read it already, to go grab it.
27 in the Nantucket series. Oh my goodness. I just assumed
I
they would
know.
go on indefinitely.
Forever.
Like, yeah. I wonder what she will do
know.
next. Cool.
I have a insight, which is, I will give you a slight hint, which is a New England boarding school is the location of the next one. That's will be in fall of 2024.
Cool.
So,
Is it going to be
Yes.
Dark Academia?
I don't know about dark academia, but
Don't start spreading rumors.
I know.
Just switching
unless you
gears.
want, unless you want my
Switching
unfiltered opinions about New England, and I don't think anyone needs them.
So Steve, we have some
Wait,
nice...
is this where we roast Steve? Okay.
Ah!
Got it.
Fine with me.
Go
Roast
on
away.
ahead, Tom.
No, I'll go. Let's hear the comments first.
Oh, Dee says we will miss you. Thanks for all the great recs. And Kim says, enjoy all your new reading time and welcome, Liz. And then also Lori asks, and it's okay if you don't have an answer, Steve, can you tell us anything about Until August by Gabriel Garcia Marquez?
You know what? I have not read it. It's also been embargoed. I can't. No, I can't because I don't remember a thing about it. Other than it's Marquez and it's one of those found in a drawer kind of manuscripts.
And
Yeah.
that's
Do you
coming.
remember anything else,
It's
Liz?
coming soon, right?
I can't remember.
I
I think
think
it's
it,
I want
March.
to say August. Why? Oh
Oh,
no,
I thought
because
it was
that's the
sooner than
title. Never mind.
It should
Yeah.
be in August. Yeah.
I think it's April.
It's either March or April, I think.
But
I
yeah,
think
it just
so, too.
came out of
Spring.
nowhere. Like I didn't hear about it till Shelf Awareness featured it in their pre-orders newsletter. That was the first time I saw it.
Yeah.
Sorry, Lori. We'll have more info soon, I'm sure, though.
Sorry.
I'll present it at some point. How about that?
Cool.
There we go.
Okay. Roast.
Well, I'm not gonna roast Steve, but I was thinking like what Stay True is one of those books that like that's a Steve book. This was another one. I'm pretty sure, Steve, isn't this?
Oh yeah.
This was a Improbability of Love. So I was looking for books that I remember Steve talking about, and this was a book that you raved about, and then I took it on vacation and completely fell in love with it. I don't know if there's been another book by Hannah Rothschild, but
She's had a couple since then, and they also she's from the British aristocracy, and she roasts the British aristocracy. She does it a bit in Probability of Love, and she's done it in her other novels too. In fact, she has one called High Times. High Times? It's on the summer list.
Oh, good.
But this is the best that I've read of hers. It's really good. It's about a painting, and
That's right.
called The Improbable, or called, is the painting called The Improbability of Love? It
I
is.
thought it was. I think it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, and yeah, all these, it's discovered by a young chef, a woman. She discovers it in a pawn shop or something like that, a British thrift store, and then it becomes known what she's got, and everybody wants it. And the painting tells its story throughout
That's
the
right.
book. Who has owned it at different times, about the painter, everything. It's really good.
Well, I've always loved all the books you presented, Steve, and nobody presents a book with quite the way, I mean,
Well,
really memorable way that you do. So thank you.
Thank you. That's very nice of you to say that. It's been great doing these tea times, because with such great, I mean, I think everybody's fabulous. You all are so passionate and you know your shit, really, really well. And it's been a privilege, working in publishing all these years, and among, really great, smart, fun people who love books. I mean, it's great. It's been good.
You're gonna be missed. Mary
Yeah.
Beth sends her regards. She's a big fan of Steve.
Oh, Mary Beth.
I told her you were doing your last one. She goes, "Okay, my
Oh,
best."
yeah.
I know people are having a hard time saying goodbye to Steve.
Yeah.
But somehow they managed to do it.
They do, but
Steve, do you want to say anything about what you might be up to?
I'm going to be doing some writing. I can't promise it'll be good. I can, but I'm going to be doing some of that, and that's the main thing.
So look out, you might be hearing about Steve in a different capacity on Tea Time in the future.
I
Exactly
can only
right.
hope. Yeah.
All right, thank you everyone for watching. Thank you everyone for being here, both reps and everyone watching. And yeah, Steve, congratulations, and welcome, Liz, and we'll see y'all next week.
thank you.
I
Here's
Have a good
Steve.
evening.